Well, welcome to this week's episode of The Dental Guys. We're back. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy, and this is an exciting show, Wes. We get to bring you guys and ladies the AO recap. It's funny. Think back, Wes. We were doing the AO recap long before it was officially sanctioned by the AO. I mean, just because we were going, and they didn't know who we were, and we were just like, well, you know what? Our listeners want to hear about it. So we would go outside and we're in Florida. That was the time that lady's hair burned off in the restaurant.
That's a great story.
That's another story.
If you're a longtime listener, go back and listen to that AO recap from Orlando, Florida. That was epic. Yep.
Yeah. So we're outside the
bass.
convention hall. Yeah.
How you want your sea bass?
Watch out.
Asian style.
That's right. Well done. Well done. But
John, are we divorced? Are we still together?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's some people.
As far as I know.
There's some people out there that you know who you are. You guys. What are you doing? What are you doing? The heated debate over cantilever prosthetics in 7 and 10 side,
I don't know,
or whatever in the anterior.
Everyone's such special snowflakes these days, Wes,
I think so, John.
That if you don't you can't even have like a conversation where you're like, well, what about this? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're talking in a very animated way. They must hate each other.
Yeah, my dad and I, you know this. We love a good conversation where you can have conflict, battle it out. And Dad and I at the dinner table, a lot of times growing up, would have these, elevated discussions, let's call it that, because it really wasn't conflict. It's an elevated discussion about high-level things. I know a lot of times it was Dad, it was engineering, him being an engineer, and me being in science, and he was always the one to help me with math and things like that. And Mom would just like, guys, I just can't handle this. She couldn't handle it. And then she sometimes was just like, can we just not like talk about these things right now? And I'm like, we're not mad at each other. Like, I mean,
she was just like a natural peacemaker, and that's fine.
She was. If you knew her, John, she was. She was one that brought everybody together. So
she was great at that. But like in the end, if you're not, if no one has ever challenged the way you've thought, or if no one in the last year that well has actually had enough care about something that they've actually said, hey, I don't know about that, or are you really sure about that? Then I don't know that you're like living life. I just don't get we're so anti-conflict, but I think in the search for knowledge, there will always be things that you got to go, hey, like it's worth taking the risk of having those conversations and going, hey, what do you really think here?
I was reading someone that's a philosopher, theologian from early 1900s, and he was talking about should you read, in his particular case, it was a religious philosophy and things like that we were talking about, and he said, I get all these questions about should you read secular, books about things that may be of contrary to what you believe, and he was like, if you're not growing to understand and analyze the other side of things to help you build your, whatever you've got that you're building, right? Your case.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't entertain all the other opinions and have knowledge about other opinions, and then it either reinforces what you think, or it might just change your mind, which is what science is all about, right? It's about having your mind changed by data. Anyway, that's why we do what we do. It's not because we're always going to see the same way on something. We're going to go, hey, this is what I'm doing, but here's why I'm doing it. And it's not just opinions. It's why, it's why, and always being good with asking the why.
So why in the world, would you reach out to the Dental Guys right now, 865-544-8954? Well, you'd reach out to the Dental Guys because, hey, we're not here to answer every text, but we're here to get the feedback. We've got some great feedback over the last few months. I really appreciate your guys' feedback. Some of you guys were interested in even some of the things that John and I were doing, and whether it be, how we handle work-life balance, those type of things. We've got some episodes coming up about that. We want to talk more about that in the future. Also, some of you were, talking about, hey, the denture course is sold out. How do I sign up for the denture course? Hey, we got some information about that coming too, because the first course went off with really good, and some of you are all wanting to get involved and maybe come to that. So I'm teaming up with the Dental Crafters Network again. We're going to put on another denture. John, you and I've got some exciting things to talk about, but before we get to that, right, the Dental Guys is brought to you by tonight, the Restorative Driven Implants. Restorative Driven Implants is a place where you can go and to get the standard principles and fundamentals it takes to start doing cases that are practical, that you should be doing in your office. Maybe you should be doing them, but I tell you what, if you're considering surgical placement of dental implants, it starts with a good foundation, and that is a restorative driven approach. And that's why the name Restorative Driven Implants exists. It is a top-down specialty. So it starts with the crown, and then the crown drives, the prosthetic drives the implant surgery. And one of the things we like about restorative driven implants is that approach to dental implant therapy. It impacts no matter what implant you're placing. This course will help guide you into the right type of placement, a modern approach to surgery using techniques that John and I employ in our practice and have employed for years. Look no further than a U.S.-based surgical training program. Head over to restorativedrivenimplants.com right now and make sure you mention the Dental Guys. And we appreciate Restorative Driven Implants and their sponsorship of the show. John?
And the Dental Guys is also brought to you by the Dental Crafters Network, longtime sponsor of the Dental Guys. Discover the difference a relationship with the Dental Crafters Network can make. As a full-service laboratory, they pride themselves on listening and understanding your unique needs, guiding you toward innovative solutions that make a difference. Dental Crafters Network focuses on improving your patient's quality of life with cutting-edge digital dentistry solutions. Visit dentalcrafters.net or call 1-800-472-8302 and make sure to mention the Dental Guys to receive 10% off your first case. Thank you so much to the Dental Crafters Network for being a longtime sponsor of the Dental Guys. And
Appreciate it.
as we get into, speaking of the Dental Crafters Network, one of the things that I've been testing them with over the last 4 months or so, we've had a lot of people moving into our neck of the woods, Wes, I know you as well, from other states, because there's been a little bit of an exodus ever since COVID from a lot of bigger cities, and people are remote working, and there's lots of reasons. But with a lot of new people comes, we've had record numbers of new patients. It's been crazy. But with new people comes sometimes bigger problems we've found. And the last few months, the show is really a good topic, talking about the AO and how to do things. The theme of this year's meeting was making things easier, which we kept laughing at because it isn't easy. And it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek theme. But we've been seeing a lot of big-time failures, big-time case failures coming into our practice. And some of the reason we may be seeing them is because we're known for doing some of these types of cases in our region or our area. Or maybe it's because somebody refers it to us. But I'm seeing some things that patients are walking in with these really complex rehabilitations with implants that are just crashing and burning. And I was sharing with Wes a little bit before the show, Wes, if you want to put some pictures up, if you're sitting in your car, stop the car, as we always say, pull over if you want to see what we're talking about. But what we're showing is the first example is a dual arch case that came into the practice, and patients complain is the lower is loose and the upper hurts, the upper right hurts. And when we looked at the case, the lower, it was dual arch, full fixed implant restorations, the upper on 6 implants, the lower on 6 implants, which usually you think, gosh, could be a great situation. This patient invested a lot. These can be wonderful restorations, but the lower's loose. The upper's in trouble. And then as you go into the clinical photos, if you're looking at this, you're going to see that the upper right implants are placed into mucosal tissue and no attached tissue, and several threads are exposed on the upper right most distal implants. And so even though the prosthetic actually fit well on the upper multi-units, the implants in the upper right were so poorly placed and out of the, not only out of the bone, but out of the tissue and in unattached tissue. And the patient had constant pain and food trapping in this upper right. And then we looked at the lower, and the prosthetic did not fit passively. In fact, it was loose and it was debonded and it had been somehow luted to some cylinders, and it was made out of a high performance polymer. And we've talked about high performance polymers on the show before. They're definitely not proven. They're not necessarily ready for prime time, but kind of everything was wrong with the lower. The implants were in super thin tissue. They were basically out of the bone, not completely into the bone. And even though they were placed parallel, this lower was just a complete prosthetic failure and needed to be redone because of fit issues and material. And the upper was a complete prosthetic failure because of the implants that were then going to have to be replaced on the upper. And so I sent this to my surgeon, and we talked about the case, and he said, I really don't feel good about these lower implants, but we can try to keep them, maybe add a couple to just be backups. And on the upper, we're going to have to take out the distal most 2 implants and put a zygomatic implant up there because there's no bone left. So you tell the patient, okay, it's a complete prosthetic redo, and it's at least 2 implant that are going to be taken out and replaced with a zygomatic implant. He even wanted to put maybe 1 more conventional implant in, just because you're looking at this, you're going, what else is going to happen? What else is going to fail? And
how old was the patient?
This is a 60-year-old patient.
Oh, man.
And
good
the
overall health?
Decent health, yeah.
Yeah.
Decent health. And, so these people have already paid $60,000 for this case. And now they're going to have to pay, however much more, 40, 50, who knows? And now the patient says, in the end, long story short, she can't afford this and is going to have to just take out all the implants and wants me to make her dentures. And I had to tell this patient, I can't make you dentures. You have no bone on the upper jaw. And one of the few times I just said, if you really want dentures, I would refer to a prosthodontist. And I don't think they're going to be able to do anything different than I would do, but I just knew that I just didn't want to take the responsibility after this failure. So just the other day, all the implants removed. And when you think you can't beat that, the case I was just showing Wes, an all-on-4 case comes in from Texas, and this gentleman has, it's loose, and it turns out a screw is fractured on the most distal implant on the upper right. We remove it to see what's going on. Turns out the screw's fractured into the multi-unit abutment, and it's really just not fixable. We tried, we took off the multi-unit. The screw it's just destroyed, and it's seized in the multi-unit. So we need a new multi-unit. Not the end of the world, but now the prosthetic has to probably be redone. So I called the lab, Dental Crafters Network. I said, hey, Steve, I need a multi-unit. Here's the part number because I have the label. And he says, okay, let me look at that. And he goes, he called me back. We got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He goes, that part is not cleared by the FDA to be sold in the United States of America, only in China. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's a 42-degree angle correcting abutment. It didn't pass FDA inspection, and nobody has a 42. Here's the picture if you're looking at it. This is from the website, 42-degree.
Superior implant technology.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about this company.
I don't know
except
either.
I've heard the name, but it's not FDA approved, regardless of what you want to say.
Immediately before I even saw this, that it was in China, when I'm looking at this part, I'm thinking 1730, and then I see 42. Yep. And I'm thinking way back when, in the days of Lyndon Cooper at UNC, we're going over to set in the midst of greatness, who's figuring out what we can do with angled implants and what it does to bone. Mm-hmm. Not only that, figuring out what angles we can use. And I can remember him talking about angled abutments. And when you start to approach a certain angle that it starts to put more pressure on screws and types of prosthetics. There's no wonder that it's not approved. You know?
So what ends up happening, I call the practice that put these implants in and did the prosthetic, and it was owned by someone else.
Interesting.
So the old people, the practices now no longer exist. It's owned by someone else. They have no idea. They use a different implant now. And they don't even, it was very hard to even get answers. And they finally gave me the name of the lab. So I talked to the lab, and long story short, I think, and the company thinks, that this lab was going into Mexico, getting the parts that were non-FDA approved, probably for very cheap, bringing them into the U.S. Whether the surgeon or dentist knew, I don't know. Whether they knew it wasn't FDA approved. But long story short, I cannot get the part. And so then what do you tell the patient? Well, you're going to have to, not only is it a redo, but your implant is at such an extreme angle because it was planned for a 42. I don't even know if I put a 30 on it, if I can make it work. And it's for sure a new prosthesis. And he says, well, I can't afford that. So I put him on an all-on-3 with, I mean, it's still sitting on that implant, but there's no screw because the prosthetic screw is gone. It's done for. And that's just 2 cases. We've just seen like a rash of these cases, that most of them from another state coming in. And you know, one of the things I guess it kind of taught me, in our area, we still have more of an interdisciplinary approach. Now, I would say it's probably, unfortunately, because not as many people in our area, in my area, are going to the AO. So they don't necessarily try stuff because they don't maybe have the training, which is good and bad, right? You take the good with the bad. But so many places in our country now, we've got people who they don't know what they're doing, but they're good at selling stuff.
Yeah.
And patients is getting something that they think is the same. They think it's the same as what I do or what you do, Wes, or what the highest level is. They think it's exactly equivalent. And they're still spending good money for it, but it's not equivalent. And then they get the realization when we're $40, $50, $60, $70,000 in that you're like, they're like, what do you mean this isn't going to work? And you're going to have to redo the entire case. You're like, yeah, I mean, you broke the rules. They broke the rules on this.
I think, you know, this goes back to many of our conversations about, you know, some of this anything new in your office. If we're the ones that are doing the research in our office for the market, for the dentist, if we're proving technology before it has been fleshed out, then really what happens is when it doesn't work, it really isn't as big a deal for us as it is for some of these patients, especially whenever it comes to some of these cases that are, we see technology advancing so fast, and we need to put the brakes on sometimes and actually step away and surround ourselves with people and ask great questions. Should we move forward? You know, John, coming up in the show, we're going to talk about some of the newer technologies when it comes to the debate of, do you place a zirconia implant? And how you and I could even have dabbled into this area, and we have dabbled, but only in a multidisciplinary approach have we dabbled, because we're surrounding ourselves with more people because it's not a fleshed out system. I think about our conversation regarding even the prosthetic in that case that you showed, where it was PEC, probably some kind of a polyether ether ketone, some kind of like, you know, fancy thing, that if you don't have, you know, enough proven systems to be able to navigate some of these cases, then should you be doing them? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you're in a rural area doesn't mean you have to do this. You don't have to do it. You know, what's the motivation?
And the thing that brings us to the show even more, exactly as you're saying, Wes, is that one approach is you might just need to stay in your lane.
100%.
And to just do what and be okay with that, because I'll tell you, these people are lucky. These practitioners are lucky that these people aren't in their backyard, because if this patient that had to have all their implants removed was in, she's 1,000 miles away from the office who placed the implants, but if she could go back there, she wouldn't want to go back there to have it redo the case. She'd want to go back there, and there'd be some bad things that could happen. There'd be some bad letters you might receive. There'd be some bad phone calls and so she's only, because she's not. So, you got to stay in your lane for your own good. And we also might say the other approach is do it right.
Yeah.
Go and get the education, go to the meetings, be around people better than you who do know how to do these things well, because it's going to, in the end, cost you more than you can ever make. It's going to cost you more than you can ever make, because as much as we love the AO's theme for this year's meeting of making it, or how to make it easy, it was always kind of an ongoing joke that the AO knows that they're like, it's not easy. We're trying to make it easier. We're trying to make it more predictable, more streamlined, more something that's understandable. But in the end, it's not easy. And so I think as we get into some of the recap, Wes, I think that we have to start with the opening symposium, and with really one of the most, I think, poke the bear type of conversations that we've seen. Yeah. And of course, none other than Michael Norton would be the one to deliver. And it was interesting to hear him talk before. We interviewed him prior.
And we're going to have that interview released. Yeah, that'll be a good one for you guys to listen to.
And his discussion, he said, I'm a little afraid of what will happen, but these are things that have to be said. And his title was Controversies in Science and the Role of Industry. And he basically wanted to call out the industry for what is marketing, what is science? Do we really know why we're designing the implants the way we are? Are the things we're doing based upon long-term data, or just based upon the fact that it's so easy to get things approved because it's enough similar to other implants that you don't really have to go through a brand new approval process? And Wes, you mentioned, he brought up how companies kind of portray themselves.
Yeah.
And you brought up the fact that this same, social media advertisement from one of the companies was still on social media even after he just pretty much blasted it.
These the thing about this particular topic, this keynote speech that Mike Norton gave, which we love Michael Norton. I mean, we're definitely fans and enjoy a great debate with him. You have to understand something, is that when you are put on the stage at the AO, you're vetted. You actually are asked by a scientific community, a committee that vets you and actually can assign you a topic. And so in Mike Norton's back pocket is the fact that, like, this was a hard thing for him to do. He told us that. It was not easy for him to go up there and say these things. He was asked to help elaborate on how markets and companies are putting, how should we be doing these things? How should we be moving the market forward? How should we be innovating today? And what responsibilities? So he proceeds to discuss bias in everything that we do. Everything has bias associated with us, and even internally as researchers and even clinically, we try to make decisions. We should be trying to make decisions and suppress the bias. Suppress it. It's difficult to do. You cannot eliminate it, but we try to push it down. And then he goes on to call out the number one, and I think they're still the number one, if not, they're in the top two, top three.
Yeah.
The number one implant company in the world, Nobel Biocare. He calls them out from the main podium. You have to understand this is a big deal because Nobel is the number one sponsor of the Academy meeting. Yep. I mean, their booth is massive. They spend a lot of money with the Academy, and he called them out for fake news. They had posted, I'm not going to pull it up because it's too hard to do on a computer, but if you head over, you can to their Instagram page and you look at some of their posts, and if you start looking back into the data that they're posting, there's some fake news in there, some false marketing. And he goes on to also show other social media things, not just them, of where people are showing things that are not true. And then to beat it all, he shows the quote from the CEO, I think, of Nobel Biocare, which basically says that everything they do is founded in science and clinical research, and how they move their needle is like that. Now, I'm not here to throw Nobel under the bus.
No, there's tons of companies that have made these mistakes over the years. It's not just one. But it is still, it's getting to the point sometimes where, and I think he completely admits that for the most of his career he's been associated with one implant and one company. Yeah. We know this, and that's not a surprise. But what is interesting, and his point is do you have 30 and 40 year data on your implant? And when does data become interesting, and when does it become practice changing? We've talked about it so many times on the show that 1 year or one study or 1 year of study, or at what point should you change something? And his point was showing now that he's had all of this experience with really changing very little about the type of implant and the way the implant's being placed, and showing excellent results over the years. And then kind of comparing that to a company that might change their design once every couple of years or every 5 years, and then try to post that the results are kind of based upon something like, is it even the same implant? Is it even the same design? Is it even the same surface? Are we really comparing like to like, or are we just saying it's so easy for companies to say, hey, this is a new and better design, without really any data showing that it is a newer, better design?
Well, John, in the back pocket of Mike Norton is a thing that he disagrees with. He disagrees with the fact that plaque on dental implants is a mediator of peri-implantitis. He does not believe that. He doesn't think that that's founded in good science. He believes that there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it is not plaque mediated. And there's a movement, if you all are paying attention, because there's a lack of, quote, innovation in the shape of dental implants now. We've all got root form. We all got some kind of internal conical connection if you want it. But there's a movement to change the top part of our implants, the surface texture. And many companies, not just Nobel, are moving to some type of surface that is not particular to what we're used to, which is etched all the way to the top, a rough surface all the way to the top, but more of a machine surface or maybe some type of coating. And there is a history that's being repeated here. And I have an opinion. We're not going to talk about that opinion tonight. John has an opinion as well. But when we interviewed Mike Norton, and we'll have that interview coming up. We'll talk more about our thoughts on the industry and its reaction, and maybe who's behind it. Maybe who is truly, what is the reason that we're moving this way? Are we seeing enough problems or are we creating problems? Are we creating problems that really don't exist? Are we just trying to find something to sell something and creating some kind of fear factor? And
I think that's one of the big controversies, besides just the urge to really know what you're comparing when you look at these different things, and what data, when does data become compelling? That's right. And making sure that I agree. I mean, there was just this huge discussion about, what this consensus statement that was just is being released, is currently in the process of being released, which was a great conversation.
Very good discussion
with Paul Rosen and Han Lu Wang about what's coming with the consensus on periimplantitis. But then, to also say, well, how does that affect implant designs? And are implant designs being affected by fear, or are they being affected by science? And, this is going to be great. When you get to hear the whole interview, you're going to love it. It's going to definitely challenge even more, I think, of your thought process. And we really appreciate, first of all, Dr. Norton for, being brave enough to get up and say some things, but also the Academy for encouraging. It's just like what we started talking about in the show. Yeah. The point is not, we always agree, the point is not, in fact, if you're never being challenged, you're probably not in the right circle. And he definitely challenged a lot of people, but, he even mentioned that some of the folks that he disagrees with afterward were like, we really appreciate you getting up and saying what you said, because it's going to make us all think, and it's going to make us all better. And that's what science is all about. So we appreciate that.
To go on to the next topic here, I appreciate innovation, and there has been some amazing innovation done in the area of zirconia implants. And we both have had the opportunity to probably restore a handful of these in our practice, and we're a particular fan of no design at this point. We both lament over the designs and some of the aspects. So we had the opportunity at the show. One, John was able to follow up with an engineer that's working on a particular type of implant, two-piece implant design. And he had a great conversation on the show floor concerning the type of screws that we're using to hold the prosthetic components on. And then John and I had an opportunity to interview an amazing point counterpoint. The point counterpoint 1 for and 1 for against the use of zirconia for implant therapy, not from a standpoint of like, is it ever going to work, or should we be using it right now in prime time? Like, are these ready for prime time, John? Is that really kind of, to me, and I'm just going to tell you, spoiler alert right here, it's not ready. Mm-hmm. It's not ready for prime time.
Right, especially the two-piece.
I could say the one-piece, we can do it all day long and feel pretty good about it. But the two-piece, no way. It's not ready, because the ones I put in, I didn't place the implants. The ones I restored, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for problems. And they're like, why did you do it? Why did you do it? Because consent was given. Informed consent was given. It's not like these cases here that we just showed at the beginning of the show that are complete, botch jobs, of what we principles. But informed consent was given, right? Informed consent was, I don't know, probably not given for placing implants outside of bone, John. No.
Right.
No.
Well, I thought the conversation, and that was with John Pion-Friends and Katja Nelson, and
great conversation
with two very knowledgeable clinicians and researchers. And it was funny because one of my oral surgeons had said, hey, when you're out at the AO, I want you to go check out this
do some research.
this new BioHorizons Camlog ceramic implant. And so, we went over to the booth. I talked to a very knowledgeable engineer there, and it's an interesting design. They've got a zirconia implant with they're using PEC abutments, high performance polymer abutments. And interestingly, the option of a PEC screw, a polymer screw, not a PEC screw, but a polymer screw. And their idea of trying to solve the problems that these implants have run into, these two-piece implants of fractures, of problems of how do you get screw clamping forces when you're using, say, a zirconia screw, or do you use a metal screw? But if you use a metal screw, the patient who doesn't want metal may not accept that. And, and they're trying to solve it by using a resilient material that will, quote, bend and maybe save the implant from having the failure. But and of course, BioHorizons Camlog will tell you this is going to be amazing. And then you go talk to these folks, and Joan said, "Oh, we've seen some issues with polymer screws."
And interestingly enough, they're getting ready to release this implant within the next month or two. Correct?
That's right. It's already in soft release right now.
And there's only been, what'd you say, 500.
That's what they told me. They said, I said, do you have any data? And they said, we have 500 or so cases. And now I'm not saying that if you talk to BioHorizons Camlog has had some ceramic implants prior to this design in Europe that have been out for longer than that, but they're not this design. This design, from my understanding, is just been started to be placed in the world pretty recently, and has, a few key opinion leader folks that are rolling it out and putting these in. And that's all that they have for data, and they're bench testing. And so, you're putting an implant into a patient that it's really cool looking design. I mean, everybody wants a two-piece. We want two-piece because of all the reasons of having custom abutments. But even to get a zirconia abutment, it's really not what they're recommending. There are going to be some patient-specific custom abutments available. But anyway, long story short, you come back to the conversation with these two researchers, and even Joan, who is a bigger fan and has used more zirconia implants, admits, hey, there's some potential problems with the two-piece implant. It's not always going to be there.
I love the conversation. We've got that coming up for a future release. We'll discuss too the problems surrounding the current, let's just say, science and mechanics. I think in that episode, John, coming up, why and what happens if your patient demands, what you should be looking for. I think we've got enough information from this to discuss. And two, if you have a clinician out there that is looking to start placing these type of implants, metal-free. And I really appreciated his perspective on everything and how he's doing in his practice. I really think that he's trying to be as informing to the patient as possible when it comes to. For sure. He's telling them this is new. It's newer.
Yeah, we don't have as much data on this.
I think a person that we've had on the show before, last year, Tara Agaloo, who is at UCLA, we love her. I mean, one of her main objectives, I think, John, in research is to publish data on zirconia implants. And I think she's an expert that we have to look to when we start to make clinical decisions on what we're going to do. So that was a great conversation. Spoiler alert, you've got to pause, before you start moving forward with these things. John, the last thing was mind-boggling.
Yeah,
you and I walked away from this, and we were like, I've never in my life had it explained to me this the way it was.
We always hope that when we go to this meeting that there's going to be a presentation, sometimes a presentation that you wouldn't necessarily think would be that interesting, but the topic is interesting. So we had Jung-Ying Lee from Michigan give a presentation that was simply entitled Digital and Artificial Intelligence Innovations in Full Arch Implant Treatment. And I thought, that sounds interesting. Let's go see that one. And he proceeded to just absolutely, really, truly blow our minds with his discussion and really showing in graphical form how AI and machine learning actually works actually works in a way that I could understand it. And I'm saying like truly understand the algorithms of how it's learning and how it gets better at guessing and how it gets better at accuracy, and how in order to really improve the accuracy of the results, you have to go through a certain amount of cycles and a certain amount of power of like even the computer, the machine.
Yeah, learning.
And then he goes
Neural
onto another level, and he shows how this could change full arch implant dentistry by saying, okay, so you guys got this fancy photogrammetry and this fancy facial scanning that you think is so cool. Let me show you what I can do with an iPhone and machine learning, and proceeds to show this massive, and of course, Wes and I are computer nerds, so he shows this like huge, like
4090
NVIDIA
is a 4090.
Yeah, and like a giant graphics card, right? And like you're like, how much RAM do you got in that thing, man?
How many CUDA cores? I got so many CUDA cores. I can process the world.
Yeah. So he's talking about like the heat generation and all that. But anyway, he shows when you take just like an iPhone video or a picture of implants with scan bodies, and then you run it through this massive amount of computing power.
He ran it through 1,500 times.
Yeah, and then he was comparing like the accuracy that we get from desktop scanners, which are currently kind of the gold standard, and then just an iPhone plus machine learning. After a certain number of cycles, it was as good. And then he showed a facial scan with the facial scans we have now are pretty good. And then he's like, well, I just took my DSLR and took a video with it, and then I ran it through machine learning, and it was like you felt like
incredible.
You could reach out and grab this person
avatar,
and feel
man.
like every wrinkle of their skin, flip them 360 degrees. And he's like, this is it. Forget about hardware. It's not as important as the software and the machine learning, and leveraging that into how the full arch might be. You might need nothing more than a phone.
Honestly, I think that's the coolest thing about this is cloud-based computing. I mean, to think that the days are full circle, because the day of the mainframe and the terminal was how it all started. I mean, years ago, you had a terminal end. That's where terminal came from. And a screen. At that time, it was like monochrome. And on the other end of the building, because it was so large, or on a whole nother floor, was IBM and Xerox, putting in these massive like computers and like all this stuff. And you didn't really ever see the computer. You didn't see it because it couldn't exist on your desk. It was not a desktop. And so now we have the power of the Apollo lander in the palm of our hand, plus probably 1,000 times in a cell phone that can do amazing things, but then go next level. We have computer farms now that are sucking the energy of some of our communities, where they're having to, like these companies, Google and Microsoft and NVIDIA are they're building their own power stations to supply power to off-site computers. So imagine having a terminal end that's a camera, a dumb camera, that's taking photos and pictures, and it's offloading it through the internet to a computer farm, and instantaneously it runs it through ever how many times and cleans up everything and generates the image that you see on the screen. Now that's what we're talking about.
And the fact that like it takes away all the pressure, as Wes is saying, from you investing in this crazy, and really all you need is the right image acquisition.
It's an acquisition tool.
Falls into and then everything happens offsite. Now, what he was doing a lot of it still in the box right there, because that's the proof of concept. That's what
he's
does. Like, okay, what if we took all of this and then we got, NVIDIA involved, and they put, 10,000 computers on this for 1 hour, or what about 1 minute or 1 second or 1 millisecond? How much computing power does it take for Google's AI to be able to return you an instantaneous search result right now? It takes like 0.01 milliseconds. So it searches the entire internet basically in 0.01 milliseconds and spits you out a 4 or 5 paragraph summary of what you asked. ChatGPT does the same thing, the entire internet within a millisecond. And so can we do the same thing with data in a photo that can then create a verified digital model?
Unreal.
Just with an algorithm. And
Unreal.
I don't
haven't
think
stopped
that I
thinking
would
about
have
it.
thought that it was going to go this way, Wes, because when we were together back in 2014, I think, at that digital dentistry conference.
Yeah.
And the whole focus was on how can we get good enough hardware that we can get the data in this box that you need, that it can do all this processing for you. And even now I'll say, like the new Shining, for instance, we talked about it.
Yeah.
The whole focus of the new Shining is to do it all in the box.
Yeah.
Facial scanning and photogrammetry and soft tissue, and have it be all in the box. But I'm not saying that's a bad idea.
I think it's where we're at right now.
It's like the pinnacle of where we're at right now.
Right.
But if you just take that, you go, dang, man, the Micron mapper might be like a paperweight.
I mean, honestly, after going to the AO this year, I'm not really interested in Micro Mapper anymore. I'm not.
No.
I wouldn't. I mean, I could think we could say
it's a waste.
Right. It's a waste of money.
It's going to be outdated within it might already be outdated.
It might be already outdated. It might be.
And that's wild.
And I can't believe it, because we've been looking at Pico for a long time. It was untouchable because of how pricey it was. Then we started thinking like, oh man, 50 grand, 30 grand. Okay, we're good. We can do it. Labs investing in it. It's the greatest thing. And then the next thing you know, you go and you see like, oh my gosh, there's a solution already. There's a solution, even with what we have.
And all I got to have is my iPhone.
And all I got to have is my iPhone, right? I mean, like, what in the world? It's incredible. Why didn't you go to the AO? I don't even understand. We had some people come up to us there that were fans of the show. It was a lot of fun. We got to meet some of the most amazing people this year, and some amazing interviews. Some of the founding fathers of implant dentistry. We'll have a good storytelling time coming up as some of these episodes come out. John, I was encouraged. I love Seattle too. There's all this talk. I just want to say this, that some of you out there thinking like, well, how was Seattle? Well, Seattle itself was amazing. The last time I was there was my wife and I were there 14 years ago on our 10th year wedding anniversary. And listen, it was as if Laura and I looked around and we were like, this is great. The food's amazing as always. Pike Place Market is just like I left it 14 years ago. The original Starbucks is just like I left it 14 years ago. The coffee scene is getting even better. I would say the best coffee in Seattle that John and I had was Analog Coffee.
Yep.
That was the name of it, right, John?
We went to several places that are very good.
Very good.
Very good. But I would say Analog was just really on another level.
It was fantastic.
And just such an unassuming little place. It's just a neighborhood place. There's no tourists there.
Yep.
And so to have that level of coffee where it's not even a big deal.
It's not pretentious.
You just go to your neighborhood coffee shop and it happens to be Analog.
I mean, when the guys walk in, the union labor walks in, for their coffee in the morning with their stainless steel coffee Yetis.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're buying pour-overs and whatever they had. I mean, like, let's go. You're in a special place. And I just want to say, I mean, we had some amazing food. We possibly could have been eating, John, at a future Michelin star chef ran restaurant. Incredible. Don't share the name because we don't want people going there.
No, really? Nothing?
No, I guess we do have to share it.
So it's Kamanegi.
Yeah.
And it's special.
It's special.
And I've spent a lot of time in Seattle in the last few years because of various things. And I've been hearing about it and hearing about it and hearing about it. And we just happened to get a table because we went really early. And it was the things that were done there, the some of the dishes and the combinations of flavors. And we were told, they said, yeah, people come here from Japan to get the noodles that are being made here because of what they're all about. And I was kind of like, okay, we'll see. And even your wife, Wes, who that's not usually her like go-to, her mind was blown. And I just thought, man, this is a special place. And it's not, I think it's one of those, it's just probably the next time that we go back there. She had this thing, it was a pork birria curry nanban. I can't even explain to you how much that breaks a lot of rules. It's like the crossing together of different cuisines in a way that I've never, you just have to go experience it. If you're out there, it's worth trying to get
You're watching this on YouTube, you want to eat there right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was awesome.
It was awesome.
Seattle, just to give credit to Seattle, as Wes was saying, don't listen to the hype, man. It was clean. It was beautiful. We had a wonderful experience there, just getting to see the place. The weather ended up, we had some actually one beautiful day, as is typical in Seattle. You never get 10 beautiful days, but
it still was Seattle though, just light rain and things like that.
It is what it is, right?
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. So next time, the AO is coming back next year. Oh yeah, that's right.
Look at that. Look at that coffee shop. That was an amazing
so cool.
time.
So when you next time you're thinking about the AO, it's going to be in DC next year. Definitely check it out. It's always worth the trip. And we find that every time we go there, we're number one, where some things are reinforced and some things are pushed forward. So thanks once again to the AO as well for giving us the opportunity to be able to interview some of these folks and kind of be behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds, to get to be in the same room with some of our idols. It's a pretty special thing. And so I think if you've been listening to this and first of all, give a shout out to the AO, make sure you give them love for being committed to this type of media, for wanting to get their message out to the masses and maybe to people who aren't always going to be, coming to a meeting like that. So kudos to the AO for that. Make sure you hit up their social media, like, share, and subscribe to them. And then also make sure that you are looking forward to when we start releasing some of these shows. Check them out. A lot of these interviews are going to be released in the coming couple of months. And if you haven't already, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to us, to the Dental Guys, as we continue to bring you the same high-quality content that we're known for. And so thanks once again for listening. And for Wes, I'm John. We are the Dental Guys.